You know that feeling, right? The pressure of a big final exam. But what if testing wasn't about a final grade, but about getting you where you need to go? Well, today we're diving into assessment for learning. It's basically a real-time GPS for your brain, helping you find the absolute best path to understanding. Let's get into it.
So, let's start with something we all know, the traditional final exam. It's supposed to be this grand finale, the ultimate measure of what you've learned. The only problem? By the time you get the results, class is over. The learning part is finished. That's why some people have a pretty grim nickname for it, an autopsy on learning.
And that's a really good question, isn't it? When you get a bad grade on a final, the course has already moved on. That chance to go back and fix what went wrong, it's just gone. The test tells you that you got lost, but it doesn't give you any kind of map to find your way back.
So you've really got two completely different philosophies here. On one side, you have the traditional test. It's a final stop, a judgment that comes way too late to be helpful. But on the other side, you have assessment for learning, which is all about real-time guidance. It's not about judging where you ended up, it's about helping you adjust the route while you're still on the journey.
And that leads us to a much, much smarter way to navigate learning. The absolute best way to think about assessment for learning is as a GPS. And it's not just for the student, it's for the teacher too. Now, the key thing here is that this isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous back and forth conversation. It's all about teachers and students working together as a team to figure out three things. Where are we right now? Where are we trying to go? And what's the best way to get there? It totally transforms learning into a collaborative journey. The whole process really boils down to these three simple but super powerful questions. First, where is the learner right now? Second, where do they need to get to? And third, and this is the most important one, how do we build a bridge to close that gap?
Okay, so I know this might sound a little bit abstract. Let's make it real. What does this assessment for learning stuff actually look like in a classroom? How does a teacher use this GPS in their day-to-day teaching?
Okay, picture a math class. The teacher asks a tricky question about fractions, and all the students hold up their answers on little whiteboards. Instantly, the teacher sees a pattern. A lot of kids are making the same mistake. Now, this isn't a test for a grade. It's a quick diagnostic check. And with that real-time info, the teacher can immediately change course and address that misunderstanding right there on the spot. And that right there is the whole idea. It's not about catching kids being wrong. It's about catching those little misunderstandings before they grow into big problems. That quick, in-the-moment adjustment is the absolute heart of assessment for learning. Here's another super simple but crazy effective tool, the exit ticket. So right before the bell rings, every student jots down a quick answer to a couple of questions. It takes maybe a minute, but it gives the teacher a gold mine of information about what actually stuck with students and what didn't. So what happens to those exit tickets? They don't get a grade, they get read. If the teacher sees that half the class is still fuzzy on a key idea, guess what they're starting with tomorrow? It creates this amazing feedback loop that lets the teaching adapt to what the students actually need right now. As you can imagine, this whole approach totally changes the vibe in the classroom. It stops being a top-down lecture and becomes more of a partnership. Honestly, learning becomes a team sport. The roles just get completely flipped. The teacher isn't just a lecturer anymore. They're more like a guide or even a diagnostician. And even more importantly, the student goes from being this passive listener to being an active owner and collaborator in their own learning.
So what does being an owner of your learning actually look like? Well, it means students are getting involved in discussions. They're using checklists to check their own work. They're learning how to give helpful feedback to their friends. And they even get to help set their own goals. They become true partners in their education.
All right, let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about what this is and how it works. But now for the big question. Why does it matter? What's the ultimate payoff for doing things this way? And that's a fair question. Changing how we do assessment is a huge deal. Is it really worth all the effort? Well, the research and the results say a big, resounding yes. The benefits here are massive. This approach builds deep, real understanding, not just memorizing facts for a test. It catches those little errors before they snowball. It develops skills everybody needs, like critical thinking. And maybe the most important thing of all, it creates learners who are confident and can manage their own learning. This is exactly why it's a total game changer, especially in subjects like math and science. Think about it. In those classes, everything builds on what came before. If you have a shaky foundation, the whole thing can fall apart later. Assessment for learning makes sure every single one of those building blocks is solid before you move on to the next one. So, we'll leave you with this one big thought to chew on. What if we completely reimagined what assessment is for? What if it wasn't a tool for a final judgment, but a tool for discovery? A way for students and teachers to discover, together, what's understood, what isn't, and what the best path forward really is.